Yes. All right. It's just after 10 o'clock. We have quorum of 6 people, 2 online, but I can see, and 3 here in the meeting room, and you guys are missing 4. Sorry. Oh, and Mary Lou, yes, 4. And you guys are missing my caramel upside down plum cake. So just wanted to let you know. All right.
Is this punitive?
Yes. All right. So are there any declarations of interest? Okay, seeing none, and I know you've already done the roll call, Sally, and so we're good there. So first, we're going to do an adoption of the agenda, and then we'll do a land acknowledgement. So I need, where did that go? All right, resolved that the agenda for the September 30, 2024 Finance and Administration Advisory Committee meeting be adopted as presented. I need someone to move. I see Richard moves and Mary Lou seconds. All in favor? Motion is carried. So we're here on the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. And so we have a brief land acknowledgement that we'll read to commemorate that. Mississippi Valley Conservation Authority is charged by the Crown with the management of natural hazards and resource management in the watersheds of the Mississippi and Carp Rivers and an area draining to the Ottawa River. MVCA's jurisdiction includes land subject to treaties with Indigenous peoples, Treaty 27, the Williams Treaty, and the Crawford Purchases of 1783. Our jurisdiction is also the traditional and unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. We offer our gratitude to the First Peoples for their care of and teachings about the earth and our relations. And as we move together along the path of reconciliation, may we learn and once again to honor those teachings and bring them into the work that we do at MVCA and here today. So thank you in Miigwech. And I know that there's now a special portal on our website for Indigenous First Nations people for issues related to the watershed. And MVCA is actively reaching out to First Nations for the watershed. And one example, and we've heard about, is their involvement in the Kashwackamack Lake Dam upgrade or replacements. So thank you very much for that. All right, so we'll move on to the approval of the minutes of the Finance and Administration Advisory Committee. Resolved that the minutes of the Finance and Administration Advisory Committee meeting held on 28th of March 2024 be received and approved as printed. I need someone to move. I see Jeff moves. I see Paul Kehoe seconds. You got that down there, Sally? Are there any comments on the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor? All right, the motion is carried to approve the minutes. All right, so the next one is the job evaluation implementation report. And for this, we need to move in camera. So
I can present first.
You want to present first? All right, so Sally was going to do a presentation first, and then we'll need a resolution to move into camera.
Okay, so as part of MVCA's effort to ensure job equity within the organization and that people are being fairly compensated for the work they do, MVCA does have a whole job evaluation process. And we've been going through a process over the past 4 years of trying to review all positions that hadn't been reviewed in some time, some of them dating back to as long ago as 2011. And as you can imagine, this organization has evolved a lot over the past 15 years or so, 14 years. And so this process allows us to make sure that we're doing well by our employees. And it begins every year with the annual performance review. And at that time, a person's job description is reviewed. And if that person has any concerns that the job description no longer aligns with the work they're actually being assigned to do, they can flag it. And if, the management team believes it's a substantive change to their job description, then it can flag them as being, warranting a job evaluation. So we've been trying to do them on a priority basis to make sure that the ones with the most significant differences are addressed. And so several of you around the table have seen other ones come forward in the past. And we're nearing the end. It's like anything, you just think you're getting to the end, and then other ones come up that you need to do. So invariably, we will probably be coming back to you next year with a couple more, but in any event, we are nearing the home stretch here. So the ones that we did this round were the biologist position, environmental planner, regs officer, site supervisor, stewardship coordinator, and the treasurer positions. So when we go through the job evaluation process, to ensure that it's a fair and transparent process, and by transparent, I don't mean public, I mean that it's replicable within the organization. We do it as a management team so that we're able, quite literally, to debate and the relative, challenges of various positions to make sure that we're not caving to systemic bias within the different type of job positions and classes. And as well, we do it with a third party present, which in this case is Joanne Glazer from Cornerstone. They've been our HR advisors for several years now. And she acts as a bit of a broker, arbitrator in these sorts of things. Not so much arbitrator, because she really strives to have us come to consensus around the scoring on all the different measures. And she's the one that documents our findings, and then it's her report that I'm tabling with you in camera today. What I propose to do with the committee's leave is also speak briefly to the market review process, so that we can deal with both items in camera. So the market review is often happens in parallel to the JE process, the job evaluation process. And the goal is similar but different. It's to make sure that we're paying our employees in a competitive manner such that we're not at risk of failing to recruit capable applicants or to retain, valued employees. So it's really about making sure that we're paying competitive rates as an organization to sustain the work of the organization. So to do this, the first step is to try to find comparable organizations that are doing equivalent type of work in a comparable setting. So you'll see in the report the list of organizations that we reached out to. We reached out to, in fact, many more, but not all of them shared their data. But what we were looking for were middle-sized organizations. We're not a huge organization, but we're not microscopic, but doing comparable work. And this was interesting because many CAs don't have dams and don't operate systems. Like you look next door to the Rideau Valley, that entire, Rideau Valley system is maintained by Parks Canada under the Heritage Canal Park system. So even though they're our next door neighbor, we're not comparable organizations when it comes to the engineering and operating side of our organizations. So we had to look further afield for some organizations to make sure that we're comparing like for like organizations. And then similarly, we wanted to stay within Eastern Ontario for looking at municipalities, but we were looking for municipalities of similar complexity and And included in that list is the City of Ottawa, because they are our major competitor for employees. But previously, when we've reached out to them, we haven't received the same degree of feedback as we received this time. This time, they actually took a lot of time to find comparable jobs within the organization. And I'd like to give a sincere thanks to the City of Ottawa for putting that level of effort in finding comparable positions for us, because it really helps in making sure we're comparing like for like jobs. So with that, I suggest that we move in camera at this point, and I can share more detailed findings, and then we can come out of camera for the committee to consider the motions.
All right, so just some clarification. Okay, no, I'm just looking, the board appoint the executive. So all the motions that are going to come out of camera are out of camera. Okay, got that. Thank you. All right, so are we ready to move into camera? Any other questions or comments before we do? Not seeing any. Resolved that the Finance and Administration Advisory Committee move to in-camera session for discussion of the following matter: labor relations or employee negotiations, and further resolved that Sally McIntyre remain in the room. I need someone to move. I see Mary Lou moves. Roy Hudel seconds. All in favor? All right, the motion is carried. We're now moving out. All right, so we're out of camera and we have two resolutions. The first is resolved that the Finance and Administration Advisory Committee recommend the Board of Directors approve the changes in job ratings as recommended. So basically, we're telling the board that we're asking the board to please approve these job ratings in the job evaluation and implementation report. So I need someone to move. So Mary Lou moves. Looking for a seconder. I see Roy seconds. Any more questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? A motion is carried. And just to make sure, before we go to the next one, basically there's agreement to recommend the executive committee, to recommend the formation of the executive committee with the idea that the executive committee would work with Cornerstone. This doesn't have to be in the resolution. I'm just saying we'll work with Cornerstone, and that the executive committee will come back to the Finance and Administration Advisory Committee before then recommending to the board. That's the way. Yes. Okay. Earl.
Can I just make one?
Yeah. Go ahead.
So I have now received a proposal from Cornerstone, and it's definitely very affordable. And I don't know that I can offer their competitive price right here, but it's in the order of $2,000. So very, very affordable.
All right, so resolved that the Finance and Administration Advisory Committee recommend the Board of Directors appoint the Executive Committee to review management compensation. Yeah, plus Roy is a non-voting advisor. Roy Hudel as a non, and I see Paul, so anyone to second? Sorry, yeah, Paul, so move, and then Mary Lou seconds. Any more comments? All right, all in favor? All right, the motion is carried. All right, so now we move on to review of staff compensatory.
You just dealt with them.
I did.
Dealt with them together.
Oh, I thought we were just doing 2 and 3. I'm sorry. Hold on here.
Oh, no, pardon me. Yes, you're right. You're right.
Oh, good. I was going, what did I miss? Just, all right. All right, so now we're moving on to number 4, review of staff compensatory, that's it, compensatory benefits. Stacy.
So we have been obviously reviewing salaries and market assessments. We've been reviewing the employee manual over the last couple of years. We're looking at it being kind of our upcoming project of actually reviewing the benefits and compensation that's not salary. So hours of work, vacation, stat holidays, all of those other benefits when parental leave, short-term, long-term disability. And part of my salary review, when I was reaching out, I also asked all of those organizations if they would be willing to share their employee manuals and their policies around hours of work, et cetera. So we have most of that material already together. So we're looking at putting it together, as well as interviewing staff. What's important to our staff? That's where this initially came from. Staff were asking about some of what benefits we had and didn't have. So just is there a motion on this one? No, it's just information. So I don't know if people have questions or.
All right, I see Jeff has a question.
Is this an internal review, or are we hiring a consultant to assist with this?
So we're not planning necessarily to retain support. However, if we do so, it'll be more of a check-in kind of advisory support on, issues of complexity. And we're not looking to expend any additional funds on this. We'll just dip into our annual consultant budget for, the ad hoc things that the organization addresses in a year.
Thanks.
All right, not seeing any more questions on this topic. So thank you, Stacy, as a for information topic. So we'll move now on to number 5, which is the proposed 2024 budget assumptions by Stacy.
So I'll start us off. The tradition at MVCA, since I've been here and beforehand, was to always look to the City of Ottawa as our main funder on the municipal levy for direction on things like the rate of growth to be assumed, the upper limit of the operating budget levy increase. And then we've, as a collective of the board, we've tabled for the board the proposed capital increases based upon our 10-year capital plan. So what you see before, and then the last piece is that we have also typically looked at the August rate of CPI to inform staff wage increases. So what you see before here is the draft direction that City of Ottawa staff received from its council on property tax increases. So they're looking at a 2.9% increase plus a 1.5% increase, an allowance for growth. And then our schedule of capital levy increases indicates 8.5% for this year plus growth, which is a further 1.5. Within that amount would allow for that 2% increase in staff wages. So this isn't an add-on, this is within that. And then the last piece is the workforce adjustment that we're recommending for this year. So for those who weren't here at the prior term of council, during 2020-21, when the housing industry was booming, we had to staff up to meet demand and ensure that we were meeting regulatory timelines. And the agreement at the time was that we would use our reserves to pay for those staff and phase those positions on to the levy over time. And that, as general manager, I would adjust the FTE component if things changed. And they have changed. We've seen the downturn. And so I did assume an FTE last year, and I'm assuming another FTE going forward. We weren't sure how this year was going to play out, so we maintained the watershed planner on payroll while we took that wait and see approach. But based upon current economy and where things are at and the operations of the organization, I feel that we can delete that FTE from our staff component. So that obviously reduces the pressure on the levy. And so the balance that we're looking at for this year is a combination of what is still owed, so to speak. So we're now, we had it at 219,327 that we needed to move on the levy. We're removing 105 of that as all-in costs for that position. And per the previous report regarding the job evaluations, we're looking at an additional pressure of 15,000 for a total of a pressure of 129 on the municipal levy. And we're suggesting that 50% be put on the levy this year and that the balance be put on the levy next year. And that way we'll be fully cost recovered and no longer paying wages out of the operating reserve. Stacy, you had total dollar impacts.
Sorry, in the report, it shows what the increase would be by municipality and that's the total operating and capital. I do have available, if anyone wants to know their actual total, but that's what we're looking at for an increase. I believe the percentage works out total because we're putting increased pressure on the capital and we're trying to put in part of the levy. The total impact is 7.1% in total. The last couple years that I've been here, we've dealt with the draft budget direction of the first 4 items at this point, and we've waited until we actually present the budget before we've talked about the implementation of the workforce plan. And it ends up being a bit of a back and forth at the draft budget point. So we want to try and incorporate it now. So we're getting that piece out of the way and not waiting until we've got all the budget work done and then have to change the budget. So that's why you're seeing that combined onto the budget direction report now.
Yeah, so I have a question. I mean, we're sending the executive committee away to do an evaluation of management salaries, so presumably that's going to potentially affect the workforce plan adjustment, could it not?
So yes, and I think the goal is to have the management compensation review come back to the Finance and Admin when it meets again in November and contemplates the draft budget at that time. And then you can make that informed decision on what you want to recommend to the board. But at least you'll know what the workforce plan adjustment is base case scenario. That's what this provides you. And then the committee can decide at that time what it wants to do with respect to management compensation.
Right, so I just think that the language around the workforce plan adjustment may say that it is perhaps a little more, well, I guess all of this really is a little more uncertain, I guess would be the word I would use.
You mean with respect to the management compensation?
I mean, the management compensation may or may not affect it, right? But it has the potential to be affected. And as you said, you do give and take, Stacy, right? Like as you're doing the budget. So I just don't want people to think that that number of 64,664, which is pretty, accurate, is set in concrete. And I just make sure that that's being said when you're at the board. That's all. But yeah. So yes, Mary Lou.
Under budget assessment or assumptions, you've said that, or Sally said that in terms of downturn in activity has freed up 1 FTE, and the monetary impact of that is $105,000. Am I correct in assuming that that could be a cushion against, as to use as a benchmark almost? I don't think that's the right word, but it's a cushion in considerations for the executive committee looking at market survey results. So up to there's no overall global financial implication.
That would be for a decision of the committee and the board going forward.
What was the basic gist of that question? I couldn't.
She was asking whether or not the board could use that 105 to offset any financial implications arising from the review of management compensation. And I said that that would be a decision of the committee and the board.
Right.
Yeah, I think we're just getting ahead of ourselves on that. I mean, we just don't know what the numbers are going to be, and this is just current budget assumptions. We're simply passing numbers to give the staff an idea of the envelope within which they have to work, and there's going to be numbers going up and down within that. And so, at this point, we really don't want to get into the weeds because we don't know what the real numbers are going to be yet, right?
So what is this then? What does this mean? Like, what are we passing a motion here, or?
No, we are passing a motion to recommend the budget assumption numbers on the very first page, right? If you look at the page in your agenda agenda items, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We are basically recommending that this go to the board to approve these assumptions for when staff make the budget. And this is what we do every year, right? We basically, and then the board approve a set of assumptions. It provides the envelope within which staff go away and create a budget. Does that answer your question?
I guess so, but it doesn't have, in that number 1, it doesn't have what the growth is. If that's the motion going forth. Oh, no, it's number 3 is the growth.
Correct. That's correct.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that this is, except for the workforce plan adjustment, which we've always addressed every year, but normally this is the 1, 2, 3, and 4 are normally what we recommend to the board, and the board then approves, as I said, to provide the envelope within which staff is to create a budget for us. Are there any more questions or comments? So seeing none. Seeing none, I'm going to read the resolution. Resolved that the Finance and Administration Advisory Committee recommend the Board of Directors direct staff to develop the 2025 budget and related documents in accordance with the following parameters. Number 1, an increase of 2.9% plus assessment growth to the operating levy, an increase of 8.5% plus assessment growth to the capital levy, an assumed assessment growth rate of 1.5%, cost of living increase to the 2024 pay scale of 2%, and a transfer of $64,664 onto the municipal levy for workforce plan adjustments. I need someone to move. Okay, Jeff so moves. Okay, sorry, Roy seconds. Are there any discussions?
So we're talking 4.4. Okay.
Sorry, go ahead, Richard.
I just don't think I can support this. I think part of the budget should be trying to find savings, and we're talking 4.4% in operating from basically from the municipalities, and then, like, to me, the goal should be lower. that maybe this is what it ends up at, but I think we should be challenging staff to keep that lower than a 4.4% increase in operating. I just, and again, it's hard to debate without a budget in front of you that to justify it. I don't think it's justifiable just because the city of Ottawa says they can afford this. And say that's my point, and I don't think I'll support the motion.
Are there any comments or questions on Richard's comment? All right, so, well, feel free to raise that at the board meeting.
Yeah.
I'll take it for vote and see where we are with the vote. So, we read the motion and, I need a vote. All in favor? I see 1, 2, 3, 4, and okay, so the motion is carried. All right, moving on to the last item is the appointment of an auditor, and this would be Stacy.
So again, based on the last board meeting, we rescinded use of KPMG Kingston to do this year's audit. I reached out again to RVCA, Cataraqui, South Nation, and I got recommendations on 3 different audit firms from them, and I reached out to all of those firms. I was much more explicit this time and not going with what the norm is for being done. What are you doing? What am I paying for? We're very specific. So all 3 firms were very much that, no, they prepare the audit statements and they'll present them. I made it clear we wanted a more simplified presentation to the board and they'll do the charitable return. So I was very specific in that. The 3 firms all came back. One firm was the same one that we'd received before when I was initially going out to KPMG, and that's who I'm suggesting going with, which is Baker Tilly here out of Carlton Place. The managing, partner that would oversee it is actually out of their Winchester office, and they do the audit for South Nation. So, and Raisin. So they're comparable and comfortable and familiar with conservation authorities. And you can see the prices were quite different. It's very broad.
Yeah, and again, just for the record, I'm kind of curious how their price falls with what we used to get from Cross Street. And you don't have to be precise, but how does it compare?
So 2 years ago, Cross Street was roughly 16,000. I know part of him getting out of it was he didn't feel he could be competitive with the increased costs for insurance and liability and public service body. Accounting standards are changing drastically.
Sorry, how much was it 2 years ago?
16,000.
60?
16.
16.
But I know when I first started looking and I was getting feedback, the other CAs I spoke to were paying considerably more and in line with what we're seeing here. So I think we were getting a deal for a long time.
Well,
All right.
again, if you're familiar with the operation and you know what you're looking for compared to just coming in and starting over, there'd be quite a difference in price.
All right, are there any comments or questions for Stacy? All right, seeing none, I'm going to read the resolution. Resolved that the Finance and Administration Advisory Committee recommend that to the Board of Directors that appoint the firm of Baker Tilly REO as the authority's auditor for the year 2024. I need someone to move, and I see Paul so moves. I need someone to second. I see Roy seconds. All in favor? Motion is carried. All right, so we're at the level of adjournment. Are there any other comments or questions before we move on to the adjourning? Not seeing any. Resolved that the Finance and Administration Advisory Committee meeting be adjourned. Someone to move? I see Paul so moves. Jeff seconds. All in favor? Motion is carried. Get out and enjoy the weather. Yeah, it was Paul and Roy.